In this chapter, we will discuss the four market models, and we'll focus our discussion on a purely competitive industry. This is an introduction to the perfectly demand elastic that face individual firm in a purely competitive industry. We're also going to look at a total, average, and marginal revenue schedule as we discussed it in the previous chapter. We will present it in numerical and a graphic form as well. The total revenue, total cost approach is analyzed first because of its simplicity. And at the later portion of the chapter, we will focus on the marginal revenue, marginal cost rule of profit maximizing. And you see how this rule applies to all the market structure that we have in the spectrum. Next in the chapter, the firm short-run supply curve is to show, and as you can see, it will show to be the same as the firm marginal cost curve at any point above the average variable cost curve. The short-run competitive equilibrium concept is discussed as well at the firm level as well as at the industry level. And the last word of the chapter show you how greedy dictators can cause a long-run damage when they treat depreciation of fixed costs as a personal source of revenue. So the content to cover, we'll look at the market, the four market models. Our discussion will focus more on a purely competitive industry and all the characteristics that face such a market. We'll look at the demand, see in the purely competitive sellers, profit maximizing in the short run using total revenue minus total cost approach. And also we're going to look at it at the same concept with marginal revenue, equal marginal cost approach. So we'll look at the marginal cost and short run supply. So the market structure refers to the characteristic of an industry, right? That define the likely behavior and performance of its firm, how the firm behave on that industry. So we have a purely competitive industry and also imperfect competition industry as well. And under imperfect competition, we have the monopolistic competition, we have oligopoly and pure monopoly. We have opportunity to review the characteristic of each of this market model and compare it to each other. So this table here summarizes the characteristics related to all the different market models, right? The four basic market models that we alluded to earlier. Note here that the pure competition is a very rare case in real world, but the model is very important. Why? It helps us to analyze and explain how the whole market dynamic, right? So the model help analyze industries with characteristics similar to pure competition and provide you also the context in which to apply a revenue and cost concept developed in the previous chapters. Okay. So pure competition characteristic. Here, you can see that what characterizes a pure competition, or first, a very large number of independent sellers and buyer are acting alone, especially the seller acting alone, and they cannot influence the market price by increasing or decreasing the output. Why? Because of the portion of the market is so minuscule that the output won't be able to impact the market decision maker. A standardized product is a product for which all the other products in the market are identical, right? And what I mean by that is they all have a perfect substitute, to the point that the buyer will be indifferent to where to buy the product from. Price takers, right, are sellers that have no pricing power, right? Another word to say is they do not affect the ability to price the product. They just take the price that prevail on the market. Exit and entry, right? Easy exit and entry mean that there are no obstacle to enter or exit the industry. So perfectly elastic demand mean that firms has no pricing power, right? So firm merely choose to produce a certain level of output at the price that is given by the market. The demand curve is not perfectly elastic for the industry, right? So it's not perfectly elastic for the industry as a whole, but it only appears that way. It only appears that is perfectly elastic for the individual firm that operate on the industry, but for the industry as a whole, it's not perfectly elastic. So the firm faces a perfectly elastic demand curve because of each individual firm, right, make up just a small part of the total market. And since all the goods are have a perfect substitute, the individual firm can only produce as much or as less output for the price that is given by the market. They won't be able to individually impact the selling price. And we can see that the perfectly elastic demand curve that faces individual firm is a horizontal line at the price level, because they cannot impact the price. They can only impact the output produced. When a firm charges the same price for each unit of output, the average revenue suggests the price of the good. The total revenue refers to the total amount of money collected, right, for the sales of the output produced. And the marginal revenue here reflects the additional revenue that the firm will receive by producing one more unit of output. So that's why it's very important. The concept of marginal is very important. So when the firm is deciding how much to produce, the firm consider the marginal revenue in their decision, because that would decide the output, the optimal output produced to keep maximizing profit. So in this graph over here, we show a purely competitive demand curve that face individual firm, right, affecting individual firm. So note here that the demand curve D for a purely competitive firm is a horizontal line at the price level because they cannot impact the price, they can only impact the quantity produced. Here also, the curve of the total revenue, right? The curve of the total revenue is a straight upsloping line, right? You can see that due to the fact that the price is fixed and the average revenue and the marginal revenue coincide exactly with the price and also at the demand level. The total revenue here is just a straight, a linear upsloping curve. And the marginal revenue is, like I said before, coincide with the average revenue and the demand curve. Okay. The schedule here is the price, which is a constant, a given, right? The firm cannot impact it. So the firm total revenue here just will depend mostly on the output produced, right? So the output that produces is greater, or the output demand is greater, the revenue gonna be greater. And you see the incremental, the marginal is also constant here, which is equal to the price of the market. So the profit maximizing approach, the first one we're going to use a total revenue minus total cost approach. This is the simplistic one. That's what we presented first, and we're going to look at the marginal revenue equal marginal cost approach later. So when we look at profit maximizing, there are three different questions that each firm has answered before they engage in production. The first one is whether or not you should produce at all in the short run. In the short run, the firm should shut down under certain circumstances. If that's the only option they have, so they should shut down. Right. And also, if it's determined that the firm has to produce in the short run, then the next will be how much to produce. Okay, how much to produce that lead to how much to produce to get to your objective, which is maximizing your profit. And lastly, the third question will depend on the answer that you provide to the first two questions, right? So part of profit maximization rule is producing an output that maximize profit or that minimize losses in the short run. And if the best option is to incur losses, so the strategy gonna be how much to produce to minimize the loss in the short run. The break-even point that will show you on the next slide, next few slides. The break-even point is an output at which firm just make a normal profit and where the total revenue is equal to the total cost. So in this table here, the total cost is given as well as a total revenue. Yeah, we can start identifying where the firm will choose to produce using profit, using total cost minus total revenue approach, right? So based on TR, total cost minus TC, total revenue, the firm will produce where the difference between the total revenue and the total cost is greater, right? So If difference is your profit, which is this column over here, you will want to produce where the difference is greater. That's where you maximize the profit. In our example over here, this table over here, the level to produce will be 9. By producing 9 output, you incur a total cost of 880, total revenue of 1,179, and the differential to represent the profit is 299, and 299 is the greatest number in the profit column. So now let's look at it on the graph. So the firm profits, like I said before, is maximized an output of 9. And when the gap between the total revenue and the total cost is greater, right? The total revenue exceed the total cost by a maximum amount. That's why the gap is greater. Now that we look at the total revenue minus total cost approach to profit maximizing, we'll present the second approach that is mostly used is marginal revenue minus marginal revenue equal marginal cost approach. What we say marginal MR equal MR equal MC rules. So this rule stipulates that the principle that a firm will maximize its profit or minimize its losses by producing an output at which marginal revenue and marginal costs are equal. Right? Provided product price is equal or greater than the average variable cost. Again, look at the profit maximizing rule. There are those 3 questions that firm must answer. The first one being whether or not you should produce at all in the short run. Right. And in the short run, under certain circumstances, the firm may decide to shut down completely, right? But if it has been determined that the firm should produce in the short run, then the firm must determine how much output to produce, right? And again, to be able to minimize losses, is that's the only option, or maximize the profit. And once you answer to those questions, now it's necessary to calculate the profit or loss that will incur. Because again, the idea is either to minimize if the loss, if that's the only option, or keep improving, maximize the profit. So we do a little exercise here using MR equal MC rule. So if we compare the MR and MC at each level of output, you see this kind of sent back to the result that we saw before. The firm, in our example here, the firm should continue to produce as long as the MR, right, which is column 6, is greater than MC, which is in column 5 over here. And the firm will maximize profit by producing the last unit of output where MR, right, still exceed the MC, right, up to the equality MR equal MC. And in our example over here, the output to produce is 9, because at this level, if you decide to produce additional unit to go to 10, you will see that the MC is greater than MR. So here, the only option will be output 9. Look at the output 8. In output 8, you still have money left on the table because here the MR is still greater than the MC, so you have an opportunity to produce. So you produce up to the level 1 MR is greater, but up to the equality MR equal MC, right? MR equal MC. So we're gonna look at it on the graph over here. And this graph over here is show the short run profit maximizing role, short run profit maximization for a purely competitive firm. So MR, so this is our MR here, which is a straight line for the firm, because perfectly elastic, and MC, the green one, both intersect at this level, which is a profit maximizing or loss, minimizing output to produce, our case 9. And output producer 9, the price is 31, which is given by the market. So, and in our example over here at output 9, the price 131, you can see that if you project the cost producing in output 9, the cost, if you project the cost to the cost and revenue axis, you will see that the average total cost by producing 9 is 97.78. So the differential between the price, the market price, 131, and 97.98. If you take that time, the output produced, you have your revenue, right? You have the profit, which is the economic profit earned by producing at the level of 9, which is where you are maximizing your profit. So this rectangular area, the blue rectangular, represent the economic profit by producing at 9, maximizing profit, right? The 139 exceeding 97.78 at that point. So here the firm realized economic profit. So in the short run, the firm has 2 choices, right? Produce or shut down, because you don't have flexibility to touch or alter the variable. So you have a limited flexibility in the short run. So either you produce when there's a chance to maximize a profit, or minimize the loss, or shut down completely. So those are the 2 options that you have, because you don't have enough time to go out of business and alter the size of your plan because of the fixed element that you have in the short run. So comparing marginal cost and marginal revenue at each level of output, the firm here, our firm here, should continue to expand as long as the marginal revenue, the marginal revenue exceed the marginal cost. The firm will minimize losses by producing the last unit of output where the MR still greater than MC, up to the equality MR equal MC. So we're going to look at the other scenario when we have losses, that's the only option, and we had to minimize the losses. So that the graph, that's going to be the same step. So you have your marginal revenue that is equal to the price because of the perfectly elastic demand that face individual firm. So we had a straight line. Now you have the marginal cost curve, which is a blue one. So both intersect at output 9. So output 9, and that's where you minimize. Output 6, that's where you minimize losses, right? So if you project the 6 all the way, you see the price is 100, but the average total cost is at this level over here, which is greater than the price of the market, the price being 81, the cost is 91.67. So you see the cost is the average total cost is greater than the price of the market, right? And in this case over here, yes, we produce by minimizing the losses. What you need to produce here is, you can see here that the average variable, by producing at 6, you cover the average variable cost, because the average variable cost here will be like 75, right? Average variable cost 75, but the market give you 81, which is greater than the average variable cost. So you should produce, but you produce by minimizing the losses of the market. Because if you don't produce at this level, for instance, you still have to incur the fixed costs, because the fixed costs imposed to you. You see the short run, you don't have flexibility to flex or to alter everything on the plan. So you still have those fixed costs that's imposed to you. You produce or not to produce. Right? By producing a 9 over here, you cover your variable costs, right? You cover all your variable costs here. So it will be more beneficial or more logical to produce. And as long as you cover the salaries, your own salary, you cover all the supply or the variable, anything that is a variable, you cover that. So that would be the best option for you at that particular time. So the last case I'm going to show you is a case of shutdown. So here again, if you look at the marginal cost curve, which is a blue one, and you look at the marginal revenue, if you at any point that the two curve intersect, what you see here that is the market price is below the average, the minimum average variable cost, and also it's below the, of course, the average total cost. At this point, if you, let's say you decide to produce at this point, you won't be able to pay your supplier. You won't be able to pay your salary. So you cannot afford to pay, to produce at that level, because you won't be able to pay for your variable cost. So in this particular case, the best option is to shut down temporarily. Right. So there is no level of output at which the firm can produce and incur small losses than the total, than his total fixed cost, right? So another word to say is there's no way to produce over here if you are rational, but you won't be able to cover the fixed cost and the variable cost. So the segment of the firm marginal cost curve that lie above the average variable cost will become the firm short run supply curve, which is absolute line that I will show you in the next view graph. There's a relationship between price and quantity supply, right? And since the market price is equal to marginal revenue for a purely competitive firm, the profit maximizing rule, MR equal MC, will yield the short run supply curve, right? So here, the short run supply curve is the part or the portion of the marginal cost curve that lie above the average variable cost curve, okay, which is what we have over here. So you cannot produce, the firm cannot produce below when the price or the marginal revenue is below the minimum average variable cost, right? So that's what we already show as a shutdown point. So you can only produce when the marginal revenue is greater than the minimum of the average variable cost. So this portion over here, that lie, this portion of the marginal curve, marginal cost curve that lie above the average variable cost will become the supply curve for a short run competitive firm. Okay. Yes, a general idea about how the marginal cost curve, right, become the short run supply curve that I already alluded to. And one thing that I want to show also here is the shutdown point, right? So you have a shutdown point if a P is below, and you have a shutdown point over here, a normal profit. So the shutdown point is basically when the total cost is equal to the total revenue. So the break-even point, so the shutdown point. So you have the shutdown point here and the break-even point here. The shutdown point, so here you have to shut down because you won't be able to cover the variable cost. From above the variable cost you can produce, and you have your break-even point when you produce the MR, or the total revenue and the total cost are equal. So here is a normal profit, right? So again, shutdown point and break-even point. So the break-even point is D, where the firm earn a normal profit because the price is exactly equal to the average unit price is equal to the average total cost. Another way to say is your total cost is equal to the total revenue at that point. We must work through the three questions, sequentially at every time we are confronted with a new market price, right? So here the table summarizes the question and the answer should the firm produce, right? So you answer that question, what quantity should this firm produce, right? So now that you answer to those questions, now it's a determination of the result, if it will be economic profit or economic loss, right? And if it's a profit, you maximize. If it's a loss, your logic will be to minimize the loss, applying the same MR equal MC rule. So short run competitive equilibrium, A and B. So A for a single firm and B for the entire industry. So you see that the supply curve here is the summation of the 1,000 individual firm supply curve that give you the industry supply curve. And given industry demand D, the short run equilibrium price and output is at this level, the output 8,000 and the price of the industry is 111. So an individual firm must take the price of the market, right? Taking the equilibrium price as a given, right? If you project it to individual firm, the individual firm established is profit maximizing output at 8 because the price, they cannot change the price. So the output at A, right? So at this level, at A, output at A, price being 111, you see here that the individual firm have economic profit. Why? Because the price of the market is greater than the average total price, right? Which when you project is something below 111. So in that case, the differential time the output produced by the firm give the economic profit, which is the blue, the green area that we have here. Industry versus firm. So here we talk about the fallacy of composition, which is that it's a logical pitfall, right? And they get people to make assumption that what is true for individual is true for the entire group, right? So individual, in our case over here, individual firm, what is true for them is they have to take the market price. And by taking the market price, the demand is perfectly elastic because they won't be able to change the price. They can only change the output produced to impact their revenue. But for the firm, industry as a whole, that scenario is not right because industry as a whole, together they have a market power and it can impact the price, but individual firm cannot because of the market power is so minuscule that the output won't make a difference. So this assumption here that what is right for individual is right for the whole is not a correct assumption, right? And when we look at these 3 examples, for instance, when they talk about atoms, it's not alive, right? Atom as an individual, atom is not alive, but we know that human, right, the body is made of multiple atoms, and the body is alive, right? People are made of a group of atoms, and people are alive. But if you look at the atom itself, it's not alive, right? So same analogy with when you go to the ball game and you have to stand to have a better view. Think about it. If it's not true for everybody, it might be true for you because you stand, you have a better view, but if everybody staying, well, your view won't be, it will be as when you sat before, right? So same thing with if you own a stock, right? You sell the stock, it may not impact you sell your individual stock, it may not impact the price of that stock. But if everybody owns that particular portfolio, start selling the stock, so you see that will impact the price of that stock on the market. They're going to go down because the supply is going to be greater than the demand that will put the pressure on the price to go down. So the last word of the chapter, just to make analogy to when you use asset, a capital asset, one of the basic rule is that there's a depreciation, there's a consumption of that asset that generates depreciation. That depreciation is money that you need to put on the side so that when there's a breakdown or the asset, the capital asset end up default, you can repair it or you can replace it. If we think about people using those depreciation money as their personal banking account, so what's going to happen when you need to refinance or you need to refinance the asset or you need to repair the asset or replace the asset, you won't have that money, right? You won't have that money, so you're going to put yourself in trouble. And we see the concept that happens to certain countries when they mismanage the economy of the country. Example in the book is Venezuela, right? That end up have a massive hyperinflation and a very dysfunctional economy, right? Even though they have a lot of resources.